Welcome to the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology podcast. Thomas Miller. We had a question on YouTube a while back that I thought was kind of interesting and gave us a couple of springboards. The lady was asking about her personal placement of Jupiter, which, we like to do these things as we can when a particular question affects all of you. And a lot of you are wanting to be readers and wanting to do astrology on a bigger level than just looking at your own chart. She has Jupiter at 0 degrees of Cancer, and she feels that it is limiting her financially. And that's what I thought we would talk about, because she says, I'm struggling financially most of the time because of my Jupiter placement. I'm like, ooh, and Robert, the thing is, not to make an example of this, but I do hear a lot of people say, oh, this and that transit. Well, we blame the planets for things that we are actually, in the scope of the structure of the universe, responsible for. And yet, you've been doing this for so long, and you've seen natal placements come and go, and you've seen transits come and go that have indeed caused both benefits and difficulties, even to the point of like marriages, births, and deaths, the whole spectrum of the human experience. So what's the balance here? And then maybe we can help her out a little bit of talking about 0 Cancer Jupiter a little bit. And we actually queued up a chart for when it next moves into Jupiter of June of next year, 2025. And we can talk about that for a minute. But let's focus for a second, though, on this latitude of how much do transits and various aspects in our chart literally produce results in our lives that it could be positive or could be negative.
Such a great question. I've got to tell you, everybody knows this. I've said it in these podcasts. I say it in readings. I have a horrible horoscope. Horrible. First book I read, I'm reading the book, and this is a very lucky thing for me because I'm reading the old A to Z horoscope maker delineator. And as I'm reading, I'm thinking, my God, I have a horrible chart. Can I do anything about this? So from the get-go, I had that attitude. All right, this is a lousy chart, but can I do anything about this? And then, of course, as I continued studying, I realized it's not such a lousy chart at all. I've got challenges, but here's some good things in this chart. And I began very early on to learn from metaphysics and people like Swami Paramahansa Yogananda. The horoscope that we have at birth is not forced on us. It's chosen by our souls. No God forces us to incarnate physically. There are a lot of people who think, oh, I was terrible to my wife in a past life, so this life I'm going to have a wife who's terrible to me. That is so silly and superficial. God doesn't force you to be incarnated. Your soul wants to be and longs to be until the intensity of longing gives it the energy to incarnate physically. So it is absolutely truer to say, we chose this horoscope, we chose these parents, we chose this situation to be born into.
Amen.
For our own soul's purposes. So from very early on, I would see transits in my chart and think, what can I do with this? I was well aware of the negative meanings. And in fact, I think, maybe, I don't know, I've talked about these podcasts, but at one point, I was about 26 years old, reading for a young Episcopalian minister, and we got through the reading. And I said to him, if I wanted to have my horoscope blessed on a particular day and time, could you baptize me again? And I was not even a Christian at that point. I didn't believe it anymore. It was long past it. But I had enough respect for the ritual. And he said, yeah. He said, you'll need a couple of witnesses. And I said, well, great. My stepbrother's going to be in town. He's an Episcopalian. I've got another friend. So he found a little church in Santa Monica, and it had to be on a Saturday morning, Saturn's Day, get it? At a particular hour. I think it was around 11 in the morning. So I had myself rebaptized. It couldn't have hurt. I don't know whether it helped or not, but I know darn well it didn't hurt. But then I read in Swami Paramahansa Yogananda, who's, of course, used astrology all the time, but he said, show me the worst day in my horoscope to start a business enterprise, and I will start a business enterprise on that day that will succeed. Bingo. He understood metaphysics and he understood astrology. So it's very easy to blame the stars for our own shortcomings. And frankly, if you do have shortcomings and challenges, which we all do, including me, there is no easy answer. You have to work to overcome them. It takes work, it takes time, it takes focus, it takes effort, and it usually takes money. So I got myself in a men's transactional analysis group for a year where I happened to meet Jim Lewis, who was inventing astrocartography as we met in the group and became great friends and colleagues. But I was working. I knew I had to, and you can't do it alone. Why should you do it alone? Because generally, most every problem we have in life is a transactional problem that involves other people and how we do or don't relate to them. And you can't learn this stuff on your own. You can't solve it on your own. You're not meant to. You're meant to interact with other people and respect other people along with yourself and learn, where is it that I'm falling short in my relationships with other people at work or at home or in love and marriage or with my boss or with my friends or whatever area it is. But it takes time and effort. Well, it's very easy. Oh, my Jupiter's in a lousy position. That is such an excuse, and it's such a passive way to live. There are a lot of people who say, tell me, astrology, what is going to happen to me. Do you hear how passive that is? Like we are just innate sponges sitting around waiting for life to impact us? That's the opposite of the truth. The truth is we're born, we're incarnated because we wanted to do something and to experience something.
Well, like I do the Fun Astrology podcast, and we look at the daily transits, Monday through Friday, and pick out the ones that stand out or talk about the moon's placement or whatever, and kind of strategize a plan of how that energy might affect us. And then I always try to mention, okay, here's the high timeline side of that aspect that you could lean toward over the next couple of days. Would you say that's about as good of a way as any to approach transits?
It's a great way to. I mean, you got a transit of Venus trine your Neptune, let's say. All right. Well, that may simply mean, oh, it's a pleasant day socially, or you're going to have a good time at the restaurant that you usually like. All right. But it does also pay attention to your dreams. And if you don't know how to be conscious of your dreams, learn to be.
Sure.
Because under transiting Venus, trine that Neptune, you're going to have inspirations. They may come through somebody else, somebody mentioning something that sparks something, and you think, ooh, that sounds interesting. I want to explore that. You may wake up from a dream and feel unbelievably happy because of this dream. Well, think about the dream and what you were dreaming about and see if that's not some sort of inspiration under the Venus trine Neptune that you can make something out of.
And see, the other thing that I advocate is staying clear, staying clean, so that we can hear those little subtleties that show up as Venus transiting, which comes and goes so fast that you have to be in the zone while it's there, while it's applying and while it's exact. And then, after that, it's pretty well,
Absolutely.
Move on to the next one. What's next?
Well, you got transiting Mercury, square Saturn. All right, you better check your money and your checking account, your bank balances, and pay attention to money, and don't spend extravagantly under that aspect. You're probably doing something wrong. Maybe you didn't balance your checkbook. Maybe you think you have more in this account than you really have. Just be real about money. And it's a great time to have some serious business discussions if you're in business, for example. Mercury square Saturn, just be real.
Okay, I guess it's probably we could mention here something that isn't out yet but is coming, that you and I are talking about doing a video podcast of weekly forecasts, and we'll be kind of sharing our thoughts on major transits coming up for the week ahead, and that will be starting in the fall, but it'll be on the YouTube channel, and I'm not sure which one yet. We'll give you all the details when it's ready, but that will be good to get your thoughts on these weekly transits of things just exactly like that.
Well, and exactly these discussions, Thomas, about you and I doing a tag team video, which I don't know any other pair of astrologers who are doing this, on YouTube. Uranus rules video. It's in Taurus, opposite your sun sign. It rules my second house of self-worth and income, which I have Aquarius there, and so on. So what we're talking about now is very much right in tune with the Uranus transit in Taurus, and it doesn't have that much longer before it goes into Gemini.
All right, let's help this lady out with just a little bit here on 0-degree Cancer. If you have Jupiter at that spot, first of all, let's just do a couple of quick minutes here because we're running low on time. And then I'd like to hit when Jupiter moves into Cancer next, because it has a really good money signature to it. But we'll talk about that in a second. What are some of the characteristics if you have Jupiter at 0 Cancer, which means it's in the first decanate, so it's a double Cancer effect right there?
Well, and it's a critical degree, and I don't know what aspects that Jupiter has or makes to other planets, but Cancer is a very changeable sign. Now, Jupiter happens to be very good in Cancer as a rule, but nonetheless, it's not Cancer is not a stable sign. It's changeable, and it's like a woman's period. It's a monthly cycle with the moon, the lunar cycle. And it's a moody sign. It's an emotional water sign. It's irrational. So if you're just taking Jupiter alone as symbolic of aspirations, ruling Sagittarius and so on, and Jupiter does rule increase and abundance and success and all of that. Jupiter in Cancer can mean that she doesn't apply herself to financial security, which is what Cancer is really all about. That her security is dependent on her moods. And this would imply that her work, her occupations, can also depend on her moods a lot. Now, that can be a very good aspect if she's in a healthcare field or a caregiving field or a field like real estate. But if she's working a regular 9-to-5 job, she's very unlikely to feel satisfied in such jobs, and she will radiate the frustration and the moodiness. And she can be moody with people, with her coworkers, with her bosses, with the public. So that what she's putting out, it depends on when you get her, a good day or a bad day. But over time, she will constantly be seeking. She's never happy with Jupiter in Cancer. She's always looking for this ideal that never materializes, because ideals are meant to motivate us. But in physical reality, nothing is 100% ideal. There are always contingencies and compromises that have to be made and so on. And it frustrates her. So she radiates a sense of frustration, and then she hides all that under Cancer, the crab's protective shell. So she doesn't want people to see how sensitive she is and how frustrated. And she's bound to have some aspects to that Saturn, hard aspects, which make her doubt her own capacity to be successful, or her own capacity to be happy. But it's really her changeability and her moods that affect her well-being. And this applies throughout her life. Friendships, relationships, everything. She may or may not come from a family who can help support her. Sometimes you do get that, depending on the aspects. Jupiter in Cancer sometimes can indicate maybe an inheritance or family support. Well, I have known many sons and daughters of wealth. They have almost as hard a time in life as the sons and daughters in poverty do, because they don't have to work. They got the money. They can loaf. They can do anything they want to in life. So they don't have the motive. They don't have the money motive to work. And I've known some who've been very successful on their own, who come out of wealth too. And that's not, it's very often with Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer like that, it's one or the other. They either come out of a family where there's a lot of financial hardship, or they come out of a family that really has the money to support them throughout their lives, so that they may not have the motive to ever find a career that requires a lot of dedication and effort and work. But it all stems from that restlessness.
Another characteristic that I think of, okay, putting two and two together here, Jupiter magnifies, Jupiter exaggerates even, and Cancer is through the moon also, which is, I think, a subconscious symbolism that our radar, our spiritual radar, or as my buddy Hemmett used to call it, the connection to the home office, is amplified. It can be exaggerated. It can be, in fact, I would say awesome from that standpoint, because I've seen where Cancer's effect in my own chart has played out really well when I follow intuition in that area. And here she has even a bigger sphere or realm of that than most of us do. So I mean, I kind of like this placement. You know, another thing that's interesting, we moved the chart forward up to June of 2025, the next time that Cancer and Jupiter moves into Cancer. And interestingly enough, we looked at the declinations. Robert mentioned, or the lady mentioned that in her question. And Jupiter, Robert, will be at 23 degrees north, 16 minutes declination. Mercury is at 25 and the sun is at 23. So you were saying that that's actually a favorable money declination?
It is. It's a parallel aspect when you have the same declinations. So with a Jupiter return, which is what she's headed for then, and that's only once every 12 years, this can be a period where she has basically a cosmic reset in terms of everything that Jupiter symbolizes in her chart, namely opportunity and happiness and fulfillment and growth. But you have to remember, Cancer the crab has a reputation for being crabby, and there's a reason for that. They are. And her attitude may be very crabby with people in life. And she undermines her own capacity to interact well and productively and happily with other people because of the crabbiness, if you will. Because she mentions, and she's also one, it sounds like, rather than taking responsibility and saying, as I do, what can I do with this aspect? She's blaming, in this case, Jupiter in Cancer, for her own shortcomings. You see what I mean? Well, blaming astrology for failure, if you will.
That's why I wanted to address this, because a lot of people do that. It's an easy scapegoat. Those planets are sitting out there so far away and they can't talk. Well, they can, but
it really is. I mean, I was very fortunate because I have such, to me, a horrible chart that even the first book that I was reading, I thought, my God, this is awful. And of course, that book was written in a very fatalistic way, as books were. But I thought, can I do anything about this? Well, of course, yes. The answer is yes. That's what astrology is for. You're meant to do something about these negative aspects, but it takes work. It takes some introspection. It takes some honesty more than anything, being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
So it's not necessary. It's not an overnight thing. It's a lifelong process, really.
Hey, I've done 10 years now of podcast on this called the Subconscious Mind Mastery Podcast, and it tells my whole life story of changing from unconscious, unaware, not even following astrology, to where I completely shifted and transformed my life, and how I did it and the steps that I went through are in all of those episodes. A lot of people go back to the very first one where the pastor said, "You are my biggest disappointment in my ministry," which was a subconscious searing moment, and what all unfolded after that. So if you're interested, if that might help you, give you some ideas, that's there as well. We have a ton of other resources in our show notes and would love for you to check those out. Robert's email is in there. Our Discord link is in there. If you would like some talk about free resource, Kristen Lawhead is doing that. And Kristen knows that she is here on the planet to help teach astrology. And that's a great forum where she's doing that. It's available now. I don't know how long we'll keep it going, but it's there now, and you can check it out. That link is right at the top of the funastrology.com website, and it's also in those show notes. Thanks for listening, everybody. Robert, thank you for your comments and thoughts on this and for our listeners' question. We appreciate them all. Have a great one. We'll see you next time on the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology podcast with Robert Glasscock.